My name is Alara Quinn, 31 years old. When did pretending to be okay become too hard to hide? I can pinpoint the exact moment. Tuesday morning, 7:43 a.m., standing in the school bathroom under that flickering fluorescent light, watching my own hands shake as I tried to cover the bruises on my neck with concealer. For 3 years, I'd been the master of fine. Teachers asked how things were at home. Fine. Friends noticed I was quieter lately. Just tired. Mom asked why I wouldn't eat dinner. Not hungry. Fine became my favorite lie, my security blanket, my shield against a world that I was sure couldn't handle the truth, and that I was terrified would believe it was my fault if they heard it. The bruises started small. Fingerprint marks on my upper arms that I could hide with long sleeves. Little constellations of purple and yellow that I learned to catalog the way other girls tracked pimples or stretch marks. Then came the split lip I blamed on walking into a door. The black eye I covered with carefully arranged bangs and makeup stolen from the school nurse's office. I became an expert in angles, in lighting, in turning my head just so, in laughing with my hand over my mouth. Dad's drinking had always been background noise in our house, empty bottles clinking in the recycling bin, slurred words during dinner, the smell of whiskey on his breath when he kissed my forehead goodnight. That used to make me feel loved. I didn't know that love wasn't supposed to reek of alcohol, but when I turned 16 and started looking more like Mom, the woman who'd left us when I was 8, something shifted, like a knife turning slowly in a lock. "You remind me of her," he'd slur, gripping my shoulders too tight. Same lying eyes, same ungrateful mouth. Sometimes he'd say it softly, almost like a confession. Other nights, it came out like a sentence. The first time he hit me, I was so shocked I convinced myself it was an accident. He'd been reaching for his beer, and I'd walked into his backhand. That's what I told myself as my cheek burned and my eyes watered. He cried afterward, begged for forgiveness, swore it would never happen again. I believed him because I had to. The alternative was admitting that the only parent who hadn't left me had just crossed a line he could never uncross. The second time, I made excuses for him. He was stressed about work. I shouldn't have talked back. I should have done the dishes like he asked. I replayed the night over and over, editing the scene in my head until I'd removed everything that made him look like a monster and everything that made me look like a victim. By the 10th time, I'd run out of excuses. I didn't have explanations anymore. I just had survival. My best friend, Kieran, had been asking questions for weeks. Why didn't I hang out anymore? Why did I flinch when people raised their voices? Why did I always wear turtlenecks even in September heat? "You're scaring me," she said, after I declined another sleepover invitation with some half-baked excuse. "Talk to me, Alara, please." "But how do you explain that your father sees your mother's ghost every time he looks at you? How do you admit that the man who taught you to ride a bike now leaves handprint bruises on your throat? How do you say the words out loud when saying them makes it real, and when real feels more dangerous than any lie?" So I kept pretending. I kept saying fine. I kept painting concealer over purple fingerprints and telling myself this was normal teenage stuff. Everyone has family problems, right? Movies made yelling and slammed doors look almost charming. I convinced myself I was dramatic, oversensitive, that if I just tried harder, it would go back to the way it used to be, back when Dad was tired and grumpy, but not terrifying. That Tuesday morning changed everything. I'd been in the bathroom for 20 minutes, layering foundation over the newest marks. A perfect handprint around my neck from where he'd slammed me against the kitchen wall the night before. I could still feel the echo of his fingers digging into my skin every time I swallowed. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The concealer kept smearing. My eyes were red from crying, but I was already rehearsing how I'd say, "Just allergies," if anyone asked. "This is insane," I whispered to my reflection, the words fogging the cold mirror. "This isn't fine." It was the first time I'd said it out loud. Not in my head, not in a half-formed thought I could delete. Hearing my own voice say the words made my chest tighten, like my ribs were too small for the truth trying to push its way out. The bathroom door opened. Kieran walked in, her backpack slung over one shoulder, scrolling absently on her phone. She looked up, saw my tear-streaked face, saw the cakey, uneven makeup caked around my neck, and I watched her expression shift. Confusion, realization, horror, all in one breath. "Oh my God," she breathed, the phone slipping slightly in her hand. "Alara, what happened to you?" For 3 years, I'd been building walls, constructing elaborate lies. Perfecting the art of fine. In that moment, staring at my best friend's horrified face, every wall I'd built came crashing down, louder than any slammed door in my house. "It's not fine," I whispered, my voice breaking. "None of it is fine." Kieran stepped closer, slowly, like I was a wounded animal that might bolt. Her eyes scanned the bruises I'd been trying to hide, the ones the concealer couldn't quite erase. "Who did this to you?" she asked, her voice barely more than a breath. The question hung in the air, 3 simple words that would change everything. My tongue felt heavy, like it was stuck to the roof of my mouth. I opened my mouth to answer, to say the name I'd been protecting for 3 years, but before I could speak, the bathroom door slammed open again. Principal Hawthorne stood in the doorway, her face a careful balance of concern and authority. Behind her was Ms. Rodriguez, the guidance counselor, clutching a clipboard like a shield, and Officer Brennan, the school resource officer, his expression unreadable. "Ilara," Principal Hawthorne said gently, "we need to talk." My blood turned to ice. Time seemed to stretch thin, every second dragging. Someone had reported something. Someone had seen through my carefully constructed facade. All the little cracks I'd been ignoring had finally split wide open. Kieran grabbed my hand without even looking down. "It's okay," she whispered. "You don't have to lie anymore." But I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared for this moment. For 3 years, I'd been in control of my story, controlling what people saw, what they knew, what they were allowed to suspect. Now that control was slipping through my fingers like water, and I was terrified of what would be left when the lies washed away. "I'm fine," I said automatically, the lie rolling off my tongue with practiced ease. "Everything's fine." Principal Hawthorne's expression softened in a way that made me want to run. She'd already decided not to believe me. "Ilara," she said quietly, "we know it's not fine. Mrs. Patterson called this morning." Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor who'd seen Dad drag me out of the car by my hair 2 nights ago, who'd watched through her kitchen window as he shoved me up our front steps, screaming about how I was just like my mother, a lying, worthless piece of trash. I should have known she'd seen. Mrs. Patterson saw everything from behind her lace curtains. She'd been watching our house for years, probably cataloging Dad's worst moments like stamps in an album. Part of me wondered why she'd waited so long to call. Another part, the angry part I usually kept buried, wondered what finally made my suffering undeniable enough for someone else to act. "She's confused," I said quickly. "She's old. She probably saw something on TV and thought—" "She has photos," Officer Brennan said quietly, "and video." The world tilted sideways. Photos. Video. My heart slammed against my ribs. Evidence of what I'd spent 3 years trying to hide, playing out on some neighbor's aging computer screen. I thought about Mrs. Patterson's house with its perfect view of our driveway, our front door, our kitchen window. How many times had she watched Dad's explosions of rage? How many times had she seen me stumble into the house, supporting myself against the doorframe because I was dizzy from being shaken too hard? Kieran squeezed my hand tighter, grounding me. "Tell them," she whispered. "Please, Ilara, tell them the truth." I looked at the adults surrounding me, people who were paid to protect students, who were trained to handle situations like this, people who would have to call Child Protective Services, who would have to involve the police, who would tear apart what was left of my family in the name of saving me. My throat felt like it was closing. If I told the truth, I'd lose my father. If I kept lying, I'd lose myself. "I can't," I choked out. "You don't understand. He's not always like this." "When he's sober," Ms. Rodriguez finished gently, her eyes kind but unflinching, "he's a man who hurts children." "Ilara," she added softly, "this isn't your fault. Nothing you did caused this." But that's where she was wrong, at least in the story I'd been telling myself for years. I knew exactly what caused it. I looked like Mom. I sounded like Mom. I had Mom's stubborn streak, her way of talking back, her refusal to just shut up and take it. Mom had been smart enough to leave. I wasn't. I felt something inside me shift then, like a door creaking open in a dark room. The secret I'd been guarding so fiercely wasn't just mine anymore. Other people had seen it, recorded it, named it. And once the truth has witnesses, it stops being a private nightmare and starts becoming a case. Standing there in that bathroom with Kieran's hand in mine and 3 adults blocking the exit, I realized something terrifying and undeniable. Whether I was ready or not, my life as I knew it was already over. The next few hours unfolded like I'd stepped outside my body and was watching from somewhere above, weightless and terrified. They guided me through the hallway with a quiet, practiced gentleness, as if I might bolt or collapse. Maybe they were right. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide the truth the same way I hid bruises. But my legs felt hollow, like paper tubes that could crumple at any moment. They took me to the nurse's office. The blinds were half drawn, letting in soft, slanted sunlight that made everything feel unreal. The nurse, Mrs. Hollis, had hands that seemed capable of touching glass without leaving fingerprints. "I'm just going to document what I see," she murmured, as if saying it softly would make it hurt less. She lifted the collar of my shirt slowly, like she was afraid the fabric itself might bruise me. Her mouth tightened at the sight of my neck. "Did this hurt when it happened?" she asked. "Yes," I whispered. The truth tasted strange on my tongue. Bittersweet, metallic, unfamiliar. She photographed the marks, the handprint around my throat, the finger-shaped bruises blooming across my arms, the fading scar above my eyebrow that I'd pretended didn't exist. When she pointed to the thin white line on my wrist, her gaze softened. "How old is this one?" 2 years. "What happened?" "I fell down the stairs." Her silence said she didn't believe me. Her pen, scribbling steadily across the chart, said she wasn't going to let me lie my way out of it anymore. Ms. Rodriguez stepped closer. "Ilara," she said gently, "we need to call CPS." The words hit me harder than Dad ever had. "No," I gasped. You can't. He can't hurt you today," she said. For a moment, I almost believed her. A CPS worker arrived an hour later. Her name was Barbara Chen, a small, sharp-eyed woman with a tired smile and a briefcase full of forms. She looked like someone who'd seen too many kids like me, who could tell abuse victims by the way we sat, the way we held our hands, the way our eyes darted toward doorways out of habit. "Let's talk," she said gently. We sat in one of the empty conference rooms near the library. The chair felt too big and too soft under me, like I didn't belong there. "Where will I go?" I asked after she finished explaining emergency procedures, protective custody, temporary placement. "We have a foster family who specializes in short-term trauma cases," she said. "They're good people." "Foster care." The words echoed like a shout in a cave. I suddenly saw myself as a stranger in someone else's house, eating at someone else's table, tiptoeing around a home that wasn't mine. It was like being exiled from a life I hated but still clung to like a fraying rope. "What about school? And my job?" I worked 20 hours a week at a local coffee shop to save for college. I needed that job. I needed some piece of normal. "We'll handle it," Barbara said. "Right now, the priority is your safety." That word again. Safety. It felt too big, too clean, too distant. Before they transported me, they gave me 10 minutes alone with Kieran in the hallway. She didn't say anything at first. She just walked toward me and wrapped her arms around me in a hug so tight, I felt something in my chest unclench for the first time in months. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I didn't do something sooner." "It's not your fault," I said, and maybe for the first time in years, I meant it. She pulled back, eyes shining with panic. "Where are they taking you?" "Foster care." The words didn't feel real until I heard them aloud. "Will you come back to school?" she asked, her voice wobbling. "I don't know." We looked at each other, two girls who'd shared secrets and homework and late-night phone calls, and for the first time I realized there were parts of me she'd never known, parts I'd buried so deep that even I couldn't always find them. "Promise you'll be honest," she said, brushing tears off her cheeks. "I don't know how," I admitted. "Then just start small." At 2:30 p.m., Officer Brennan drove me home to collect my things. The sky was startlingly blue, the kind of blue that made the world look peaceful and cruel at the same time. I kept expecting to wake up. "You have 15 minutes, he said as we pulled into the driveway. The house looked the same as always. White siding, overgrown lawn, cracked walkway. But suddenly it felt foreign. I walked through the door as if entering a haunted house where the ghost was still alive. The hole in the living room wall, from when Dad threw a bottle. The crooked kitchen table with the leg he'd broken during one of his rages. The chipped counter where my head had hit once. I'd taught myself to not see these things. Now I couldn't look anywhere without seeing them. My bedroom felt smaller than I remembered. I packed quickly. Clothes, toiletries, the few photos of my mother I had hidden in a book, my journal, my laptop, the small stuffed elephant she'd given me when I was 5. Everything important fit into 2 garbage bags and a backpack. That's when I heard the sound that still haunts me, the old familiar grind of his truck pulling into the driveway. My blood froze. "Ilara?" Dad called as he walked inside. "What's with the cop car in the driveway?" I grabbed my bags, heart slamming against my ribs, but before I could escape, he stepped into the hallway. His eyes traveled from my face to the bags to the officer standing outside, and I watched confusion twist slowly into rage. "What the hell is this?" "I'm leaving," I said, forcing the words out. "Like hell you are." He stepped toward me. I backed up instinctively, my shoulders hitting the wall behind me. "You think you can just walk out after everything I've done for you? After I raised you on my own when your mother—" "You didn't raise me," I said softly but firmly. "You survived me, and you hurt me." His face reddened, veins rising in his neck. "How dare you? How dare I tell the truth?" He took another step, hand lifting, but the blow never landed. Officer Brennan appeared in the doorway like an intervention summoned by fate. "Mr. Holloway," he said calmly, "step away from your daughter." "This is my house." "Emergency protective order," Brennan interrupted, holding up a paper. "You need to leave the property." Dad stared at the document as if it were written in another language. His fury wilted into something small and shaking. I'd never seen him look powerless before. It was almost unbearable to witness. "Ilara," he whispered, voice cracking. "Please, I never meant—" "Yes," I said quietly. "You did." 5 minutes later, Officer Brennan escorted me outside. I didn't look back at Dad. I couldn't. The foster home was across town. A modest 2-story house with a porch swing, lavender bushes, and warm light glowing from the windows. It felt impossibly gentle, like it belonged to a different world. Frank and Delilah Morrison opened the door before we even reached the steps. Delilah wore a soft blue sweater and had laugh lines she didn't try to hide. Frank had the posture of someone who used to be strict, but had softened with age and intention. "This is yours for as long as you need it," Delilah said as she led me to the small bedroom with lavender walls and white furniture. I didn't say anything. I didn't know how. Later that night, lying in a bed that didn't creak, in a house without heavy footsteps, I waited for something awful to happen. For shouting. For a door slamming open. For a hand on my throat. But all I heard was the quiet murmur of the television downstairs and the soft hum of an air vent. Safe. I cried myself to sleep, but for the first time in years, the tears weren't from fear. They were from the unbearable weight of finally not being afraid. 6 weeks after I moved in with the Morrisons, Barbara Chen sat across from me at their kitchen table, stacks of paperwork spread out between us. The afternoon light filtered through the lace curtains, making everything look too gentle for the earthquake she was preparing me for. "The hearing is in 2 days, Barbara said, sliding a folder toward me. "Your father's lawyer will try to discredit you. He'll challenge your memory, your emotions, your motives. He might suggest you're exaggerating or acting out because your mother left." My stomach tightened. What if he's right? The words slipped out before I could swallow them. Barbara didn't blink. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out the photographs, the same ones Mrs. Hollis had taken in the nurse's office. She laid them out slowly, one by one, bruises circling my throat, finger-shaped bruises on my arms. The yellow fading remnants of older injuries beneath the newer ones, the cut above my brow, the shadow of a black eye, the map of violence across my skin. "Ilara," Barbara said quietly, "this is not exaggeration." My vision blurred. I'd lived through these moments, but seeing them captured, frozen, felt like watching someone else's tragedy. "Do you understand?" she continued gently. "Abusers distort reality. They make you question your own. But photographs don't lie." I swallowed hard, nodding. "Are you ready?" Barbara asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "That's okay," she said. "Courage isn't about readiness. It's about truth." The morning of the hearing, Delilah braided my hair to keep it out of my face. Her hands were steady, gentle. The braid felt like armor. "You don't have to be perfect," she whispered. "Just honest." I wanted to believe her. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Sterile hallways, polished floors, the faint smell of old paper and nerves. When we stepped into the courtroom, I felt small against the wood-paneled walls and towering shelves of legal books. Dad was already there. He sat beside his lawyer, wearing a suit that didn't fit him, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. His eyes were bloodshot, his posture slumped. He looked older, smaller, almost fragile. Almost. When our eyes met, something twisted painfully inside me. I hated him. I missed him. I feared him. I pitied him. I didn't know which feeling belonged to which version of him, the father I used to have, or the man who'd replaced him. "All rise," the bailiff called. The judge entered, a stern woman with gray hair pulled back into a bun and eyes that missed nothing. "This hearing concerns the petition to terminate the parental rights of David Holloway," she announced. Dad's jaw tightened. Barbara nudged me gently. "Remember, breathe." The prosecutor started by presenting the photographs. Each one appeared on the overhead screen like a blow to the air around me. I kept my eyes on my hands folded in my lap. Then they called me to the stand. My legs felt like water as I walked forward. The room had suddenly narrowed, shrinking down to the witness stand, the judge, and my father's shadow in my peripheral vision. After I was sworn in, the prosecutor spoke softly, as if we were alone in the room. "Alara, can you tell the court how long the abuse went on?" 3 years, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "And how old were you when it started?" 16. "And what triggered the escalation?" I hesitated. He started saying I looked like my mother. A quiet ripple went through the courtroom. The prosecutor nodded gently. "Can you describe one of the incidents?" I told them about this night he slammed me against the kitchen wall, about the blackout that followed, about waking up on the floor, gasping for air while he cried and told me I made him do it. I told them about the bottle he threw that split my eyebrow. I told them about the nights I slept with my door locked and a chair wedged under the knob. Each word felt like peeling off a layer of skin. The prosecutor guided me carefully. "How did this impact your daily life?" "I was scared all the time," I whispered. "I learned the sound of every footstep. I hid bruises under 3 layers of clothes. I stopped sleeping. I stopped breathing normally. I stopped being a person." My voice cracked. Delilah pressed a tissue into my hand from behind the railing. "And why didn't you tell anyone?" the prosecutor asked softly. I looked directly at the judge, because I thought it was my fault. Silence hung heavy. Then came the cross-examination. Dad's lawyer approached, with a rehearsed, sympathetic smile. "Alara," he began, "you've been through a lot. It's understandable that you might misinterpret normal parental discipline as abuse." "I know the difference," I said quietly. "Isn't it true," he continued, "that you have a history of talking back, being difficult?" "I was a child," I said. "A child talking back doesn't justify being choked." He blinked. "You claim choking, yet your father doesn't recall such incidents." "Alcohol affects memory," I replied. A few people shifted in their seats. "Isn't it possible," he pressed, "that your father was simply trying to guide you, correct you, with his hands around my throat?" The lawyer's jaw tightened. "You say your mother left because of your father. Perhaps this resentment influenced your—" "I resent my father for his actions," I cut in, "not for my mother's choices." "Objection," Barbara's attorney said. "Sustained," the judge added, though her eyes softened toward me. The lawyer inhaled sharply, recalibrating. "Alara, you're emotional. Isn't it possible your memory is unreliable?" I met his gaze. "Emotional doesn't mean untruthful." A murmur swept through the room. Finally, Dad took the stand. Seeing him walk up broke something in me. Not in the way pain breaks you, but the way truth does. The man who'd controlled every inch of my life looked like he might collapse under the weight of his own choices. The prosecutor didn't let up. "Mr. Holloway, these bruises, do you deny causing them?" He swallowed hard. "I never meant to hurt her." "Meaning is irrelevant," she replied. "Did you cause them?" He hesitated. He looked at me. Really looked. For once I wasn't his mirror of my mother, nor his punching bag, nor an obligation. "I was a girl he broke." I don't know," he whispered. "I was drunk. I lost control. I thought I was doing my best." A single tear slid down his cheek. The prosecutor's voice remained firm. "And do you believe choking your daughter to the point of bruising constitutes doing your best?" Dad's shoulders collapsed inward. "No," he whispered. "It doesn't." When the judge returned after recess, the air shifted. "Mr. Holloway," she began, "the evidence presented, photographs, medical documentation, witness testimony, and your own statements demonstrate a clear pattern of physical abuse." Dad didn't lift his head. "Therefore, your parental rights are terminated effective immediately." A soft gasp escaped him. He looked at me with eyes full of regret and emptiness. "Alara," he said, voice breaking, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." 3 months earlier, hearing that might have shattered me. Now it felt like too little too late. "I know," I said softly, "but sorry doesn't undo what you did." I stood, walked past him, and stepped out of the courtroom into a hallway flooded with afternoon light. And for the first time since I was 16, I felt something other than fear. I felt free. Life after the hearing didn't magically become easy, but it became mine. The The Morrisons let me stay until graduation. I joined the drama club and discovered I was good at pretending in ways that didn't hurt me. I got a part-time job at a bookstore where the quiet smelled like paper and hope. I learned the difference between normal conflict and danger, between mistakes and violence, between love and control. And then, on an ordinary gray afternoon at the bookstore, a tall, nervous woman with familiar eyes walked up to my counter. When our eyes met, my breath caught. "Ilara," she whispered. It had been 8 years, but I knew her instantly. "Mom?" Her hands trembled as she set a paper back on the counter. "I saw your name in the newspaper. I've been trying to find you for weeks." Time didn't stop, but it stuttered. "Where have you been?" I whispered. "Oregon," she said, voice shaking. "I changed my name. I tried to stay hidden because he said he'd kill me if I ever returned. I wanted to come back for you every day. I was afraid." I stared at her, 1,000 emotions colliding inside me. Grief, longing, fury, relief. "You left," I whispered. "I know," she said, tears streaming, "and I've regretted it every day since." I didn't know if I forgave her in that moment. I didn't know if I trusted her. But I knew one thing. I wanted answers. "Okay," I said softly, "then talk to me." And she did, for hours. It wasn't a perfect reunion, but it was a beginning. And after everything I'd survived, beginnings felt like miracles. My mother and I didn't fix everything in a single conversation at that bookstore counter. Healing wasn't some cinematic reunion where pain dissolved under a warm hug. Instead, it unfolded in cautious, uneven steps. Coffee shop meetings, fragile questions, old wounds reopened, apologies that trembled, silences that hurt more than words. But we kept showing up, and slowly, the distance we'd lived inside began to shrink. She told me about the years after she left, how she'd spent months terrified he'd find her, how she'd suffered panic attacks at the sound of raised voices, how she'd gone to therapy, worked low-paying jobs, rebuilt her life from ashes she hadn't chosen. She told me how often she almost returned, how guilt gnawed at her every time she saw a girl my age on the street. "I thought I'd made the only choice that could keep us both alive," she said once. "But I didn't make the choice that kept you safe." I didn't forgive her right away, but I let her keep talking. Graduation arrived on a warm, windy day. As I walked across the stage, I scanned the crowd. Frank and Delilah sat together in the front row, Delilah beaming like I was her own daughter. Barbara Chen stood with the other CPS workers, her expression a quiet, steady pride. Kieran waved wildly from the middle aisle, her smile big enough to reach me even from a distance. And in the last row, hands clasped tightly in her lap, tears falling freely, my mother. Dad wasn't there. I'd heard he completed alcohol treatment and moved to another state. Part of me hoped he found help. Part of me feared him always. But mostly, he felt like something from a life I no longer lived. After the ceremony, Kieran and I sat on the hood of her car, caps tossed onto the asphalt, watching families take photos in the golden hour light. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked quietly. "Miss what?" "The pretending." I thought about it, about the way fine had been my armor, thin, fragile, but familiar. There'd been a strange comfort in controlling the narrative, even if the narrative was a lie. "No," I said finally. Pretending to be okay was like holding my breath for 3 years. I didn't realize how badly I needed air until I finally exhaled. Kieran nodded. Then she bumped her shoulder against mine. "You're going to save so many people, Ilara." I didn't know yet how true that would become. College was the first place I felt like I belonged to myself rather than to my trauma. I studied social work, fascinated and shattered by it in equal measure. Every lecture felt personal. Every case study echoed as if it had been pulled from my own past. After graduating, I accepted a position at the same agency where Barbara worked. On my first day, she pulled me aside. "I'm proud of you," she said. "You survived something unimaginable, and now you're going to help others survive it too." Her words settled into my chest like a promise. My first client was a 15-year-old girl with long sleeves in summer and a story that changed each time she told it. She avoided eye contact, fidgeted with her hair, and insisted everything at home was fine. Fine, the word that once caged me. "How are things at home?" I asked gently. "Fine," she replied automatically. I nodded, giving her space. Then I said quietly, "I used to say everything was fine too, even when it wasn't. Even when fine was the biggest lie I'd ever told." Her eyes flicked to mine, quick, suspicious, curious. I saw it. The crack in the armor. The moment a truth whispers through. What happened when you stopped saying fine? She asked. I started living, I said, not just surviving. She swallowed hard. Is it scary? Telling the truth? It's the hardest thing you'll ever do, I said honestly, but also the bravest. She hesitated. Then, as if something in her had been quietly breaking for years, she whispered, He hits me. And just like that, her prison door opened. Over the next few years, I worked with dozens of children and teenagers. Marcus, who hid welts from extension cords. Aaliyah, whose mother's boyfriend stole her childhood. David, taught to confuse violence with discipline. Some wanted help. Some weren't ready. Some returned to dangerous homes because familiarity beats fear. Some escaped and thrived. Some broke my heart. All of them changed me. Once, a teacher approached me at a conference after I gave a presentation about recognizing the subtle signs of abuse. Flinches, strategic clothing, hypervigilance, the word fine spoken too quickly. I think one of my students is being abused, she whispered, but she denies it every time. Keep showing up, I said. Every time you ask gently, every time you prove you're safe, you're planting a seed. She'll tell someone when she's ready. 6 months later, the teacher emailed me. The student had disclosed sexual abuse by her uncle. She'd been removed safely. She said she kept waiting for someone who wouldn't give up on her, the teacher wrote. Thank you for helping me be that person. I cried when I read it, because I knew exactly what it meant to wait for someone who refused to accept fine. 5 years into my work, Barbara organized a small celebration in the break room. There were cupcakes, paper confetti, and a card signed by the team. I wasn't good at speeches, but when they asked me to say something, I stood anyway. 5 years ago, I began, I was a client. I sat in these same chairs, terrified someone would see the truth I'd buried under a very convincing fine. Someone in this room saved me simply by refusing to look away. A hush fell over the room. We don't always see the long-term impact of our work, I continued. But sometimes one question, one moment of not giving up, changes the entire trajectory of someone's life. Several colleagues wiped tears. Barbara squeezed my hand. 2 years later, my mother died of cancer. We'd built something fragile but real. Not a perfect fairy tale reconciliation, but an honest connection between two women carrying different versions of the same wound. I sat by her hospital bed as she slept, holding her frail hand. I wish you'd had the mom you deserved, she whispered one night, eyes half open. But I'm grateful you became the woman you are. At her grave months later, the wind whispering through the trees sounded almost like her voice. I think you'd be proud, I said softly. The breeze lifted my hair, gentle and warm. At 31, standing behind a podium at a statewide conference on child protection, I clicked to the first slide of my presentation. The photo of myself at 16 appeared on the screen, hair hiding a black eye, bangs covering a bruise, smile bright and convincing. This, I said to the audience, is what an abused child looks like. A silence deeper than empathy settled over the room. Abused children are brilliant liars, I continued. Not because they're deceitful, because lying is survival. They tell you they're fine because fine keeps the peace. Fine minimizes danger. Fine protects the person hurting them. I looked at the room of teachers, counselors, officers, social workers. Your job isn't to believe fine, I said. Your job is to believe the things they're too afraid to say. Afterward, a young teacher approached me, shaken. I needed to hear that, she said. I've been doubting my instincts. Your instincts save lives, I replied. Now I'm married to a gentleman who understands trauma. We have a daughter who laughs freely, who knows she can always tell the truth without fear. Sometimes, when I watch her sleep, I feel a fierce gratitude that her world is built on safety instead of secrets. And sometimes I think of the girl I was at 16, the girl in the school bathroom with shaking hands and concealer smudges, practicing a lie she believed was her only shield. I wish I could speak to her. I'd tell her that surviving isn't the same as living, that protecting someone who hurts you isn't loyalty, that telling the truth doesn't destroy your life, it saves it, that fine is a prison, and that freedom begins the moment you stop saying it. But mostly I'd tell her this: you are not alone. You never were. And one day you will help others walk out of the darkness you once called home. Because the truth didn't just set me free. It taught me how to free others.